for more on the passing of Queen Elizabeth II, I'm joined now by the Nigerian Minister of Foreign Affairs, Geoffrey Onyeama. Very honored to have you here, and a very special and somber day.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's the end of an era.
And she had a long relationship. We saw that video that we just saw there now with a successive number of leaders in this country, didn't she? We saw each one of them go to on invitation to Buckingham Palace and meet her and so on. So a much admired head of state in this country as well as across Africa.
Absolutely, absolutely. She was much loved. She also, loved Africa. Africa held a special place in her heart, I think, also because she was on holidays here in Africa when she became queen, and she had to rush back to the United Kingdom. And of course, as head of the Commonwealth, she interacts on an almost permanent basis with African leaders, and she's she loved Africa, and Africa loved her back.
And has there been any official reaction from the Nigerian government, which presumably would come through people like yourself and the president?
Yes, no, the president will shortly make an announcement, yes.
And how much of a surprise was this development? Because just a couple of days ago, we saw the Queen smiling and looking apparently well as she received the new British Prime Minister Liz Truss.
Absolutely, yeah. But I think that also goes to show her sense of duty because, obviously she probably was not feeling that well because I think she had another appointment that same evening that she didn't keep. And but so she must have really forced.
Yeah, she was supposed to have a meeting with the Privy Council, which she didn't.
Exactly, it was the Privy Council. And so for her to, meet the new Prime Minister, we just really showed that the sacrifice that she's always been ready to make for her people.
And that was particularly significant because when the Queen is the one who formally, or the monarch is the one who formally appoints the Prime Minister, that is a duty, as I understand it, that can only be performed by the monarch, and that has to be done in person. And so I think it's called a process of kissing of hands, although they don't literally kiss hands, but apparently that was why she mustered the energy and did it, with a smile on her face.
Yes, well, yeah, absolutely amazing, yeah.
So what happens now with Nigeria's relationship with Britain? Obviously, that relationship is with the Prime Minister's office and all the rest of the cabinet, as well as the head of state. But obviously now the succession has changed, and King Charles, as we know him, King Charles III, is now going to take over.
Well, our President Muhammadu Buhari, has a very close relationship with Prince Charles. Whenever he's in London, the Prince always makes it a duty to meet with him, and they have a very, very close relationship. So obviously, that will bode well for the relationship between the two countries going forward. So so that's and Prince Charles, I think. Well, I know he's also quite affectionate. He likes Africa too,
yeah,
and
he does.
He engages with a lot of African leaders, and so it's the relationship between Nigeria and the United Kingdom will certainly continue.
Yes.
And as I said, there's a very strong personal relationship between our president and King Charles III.
Yeah, we mustn't forget that.
Your namesake.
Yeah, but I keep wanting to call him Prince Charles, but he's sort of moved on. And of course, it's like it's like an ascending staircase, isn't it? Because he's moved up the stairs, and Prince William has now moved up to be the heir to the throne.
Yes, and he's the longest-serving heir to the British throne.
Yeah, Prince Charles. King Charles now. Yes,
the longest.
Yes, that's a good point.
King in waiting.
Yeah, absolutely. And in the course of your official duties as Nigeria's foreign minister, which you have now performed for 7 years and more, I mean, did you ever meet members of the royal family?
Yes, I did. In fact, the last time was when Mr. President was invited. I think this was about 3 years ago, to Scotland to meet with, to have tea with.
Was it at Balmoral?
No, it wasn't at. I don't think.
Okay, no, if it was the Queen, it would obviously be Balmoral.
Yes, it wasn't. Yes, yeah.
In Scotland.
And yes, and he went for tea, and I accompanied him together with the late Chief of Staff, Abba Kyari. And you could see the chemistry between the two of them. And then on another occasion, I think it was during, the Commonwealth Summit, I think the President asked me to represent him at an event at Buckingham Palace. And on that occasion, it was Prince William, I think, who was standing in, and were able to meet with him and say a few words to him and Kate.
And some would suggest that the likes of Prince William and Prince Charles are considerably more approachable than the Queen.
No, I wouldn't say so. No,
I mean, just as regular sort of people. I mean, you get the sense that Prince William is a chap you can sort of sit down and have a beer with.
Well, it's a different generation.
Yeah, it is a different generation.
The Queen is, it's a completely different era. But she's known to have an excellent sense of humor.
Yeah, she does,
had
actually.
An excellent sense of humor.
As well as her late husband. I mean, he had a great sense of humor.
Yes. So, but of course,
but he had a worrying sense of
well,
if I might say that.
In public, of course, you have to maintain that regal veneer. But yeah.
Yeah, and of course, as she got older, I mean, the one thing we always heard about her was that she was someone who was very dedicated to her duties. And you could see her live and in person performing that well into her 90s. But of course, as she got older, in the last 18 months or so, Prince Charles stepped in more and more. And we've seen important things such as the last state opening of Parliament, that it was Prince Charles doing that, and that was partly to pave the way for the fact that there will be a transition at some point, and of course because of health reasons.
Yeah, I mean, the point you make about that sense of duty, it's often felt that some of that would have, the roots to some of that would have been the way she came in line, got into line to ascend to the throne. Because, as you know, her father was not originally the king.
Yes, absolutely.
Exactly. It was his brother, his older brother.
That's a good reminder.
It was his older brother who was a king who abdicated. So, and of course, he was pilloried in the media about, that sense of duty. He preferred to marry a divorcee, an American, rather than carry out his duty to country. So she was very aware of that. And of course, her mother always felt that her father being thrust onto the throne so unexpectedly. And I don't know if you've seen the film about the king's voice. He used to stammer.
Yeah, that's true. I've seen that. Really arresting
him,
film.
Yeah, to become the king, he was very stressful because of all that. And he died relatively early.
Yes.
And the Queen Mother then always blamed his older brother, who abdicated, for putting her husband into that position and an early death. So obviously the Queen, some say that this sense of duty that she had to country also probably had its roots in that situation.
That's a very good, very interesting analysis. And of course, you know the United Kingdom reasonably well. Balmoral, where she died, is one of the places she was happiest. I mean, Balmoral is in the Scottish Highlands, and it's a beautiful place. I mean, I've been around those places because I've travelled through the Scottish Highlands and so on. Never went to Balmoral, the castle, but an absolutely gorgeous place.
Yeah,
a good place to pass, if you ask me.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's interesting you should say that. We had the Conference of the Parties, the Climate Change Conference, recently in
Glasgow, yeah.
And we were able to visit also Edinburgh.
Yes.
And it was my first visit to Scotland.
Okay.
And I can see why the royal family loves Scotland so much. It's really beautiful.
It is a
breathtakingly,
beautiful country.
A beautiful place.
It
And
is
I
a
think
beautiful
also,
country.
there's that element of, the two realms that came together, Scotland and England. And so I think to maintain that unity, the royal family
Spent a lot of time in Scotland.
always wanted to show that they were one
Yes,
country
yes.
and one people.
That's a very good point. And of course, the United Kingdom, obviously in the throes of mourning, but also reflection at the moment. Reflection of, what do we do next? Even though there is that line of succession and continuity, but there's an enormous vacuum there, isn't there?
Most people only ever knew the Queen, and the thing with her is that she was a safe pair of hands.
Absolutely.
So she represented stability, calm, and predictability, so that sort of maybe assurance, that sense of, assurance that she would have provided will no longer be there. So obviously it will be felt by the vast majority of British people. But but also, it's a new generation. These are people who, a lot of them are very young, and the monarchy might also just not mean that much to now
those people.
a
Yes,
large
yes, that's a
generation
good point.
of British people too.
And what sort of impact do you think her passing might have on the Commonwealth?
Well, she's very much respected. I think what we should...
she was the glue to some extent that held it together at a time when, the Commonwealth had lots of existential crises.
Yeah, as I said, there was always that sense of, stability that she provided. And, but, I think the overwhelming sense will be one of gratitude for a very long reign and a very long life, and she didn't suffer, she wasn't like ill for a long period of time. So I think, there will be an outpouring of grief, but at the same time, I think of gratitude to God that it's been a long reign, I think it's now reckoned to be the second longest reign of any monarch in the world recorded, so there's much to be thankful also about, so you grieve and you regret, but also you give thanks to God.
Yes, absolutely. And you sort of wonder how she actually thought, the things, because she had straddled so many transitional periods. We're not just talking about in Africa, from colonial days to independence and the way that she transitioned with all that. Then you look at the United States, you look at the world wars, you look at all the different things that happened, and as you correctly pointed out, there was one continuous figure, and that was Queen Elizabeth.
And you can't buy that. You can't get a degree in that. She's seen it all, and I think a lot of that probably explains just her serenity. When you've seen it all, there's a certain, the wisdom, of course, that comes with it, and a certain balance and keeping things in perspective. Being able to just keep things in perspective, and and I think she exuded that, in a lot of ways. So no, you're absolutely right. She's been absolutely amazing, and and you can see, as you say correctly, with all the ups and downs and all the trials and tribulations of life, the one constant is probably her.
Absolutely.
You can't ever remember any moment where she's been off kilter, off center, or any scandal, or any whiff of scandal, or see her, losing her temper or anything. It's just amazing. For 70 years?
Absolutely. Apart from that little wavering period around Princess Diana, when I think she managed it very well.
Yeah, I think she did. I mean, I think she absolutely did. And as you say, she's a glue. She kept not just her family, not just her country, but the Commonwealth together. She was that rallying point, that center.
Minister, I'm going to come back to you in 1 second so that we can sort of conclude this discussion. But I want to go to a friend of yours who is in Enugu at the moment, the former Director General of the West African Health Organization. His name is Dr. Stanley Okolo, and we were supposed to talk to Dr. Stanley if he's there, and hopefully he can hear me. We were supposed to talk to you, Dr. Stanley, earlier about this new malaria vaccine that's giving so much hope, that was developed at Oxford University. But I'm afraid things have overtaken that development, and I appreciate the patience and the time that you've taken to talk to us. You were, of course, a doctor who practiced for many years in the United Kingdom, in London, and I think in the south of England as well. What will your memories be of Queen Elizabeth?
Thank you very much, Charles. I think the main thing tonight is really to give thanks for her life. As I heard you when you were discussing with His Excellency, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, she was a constant in a continually changing world. And I remember from my early days in the UK, when it was the Margaret Thatcher years, the summer of discontent, and then we moved on to John Major, then we moved on to Tony Blair, Gordon Brown, David Cameron. She was constant all through the changing spheres of life in the UK, and particularly as it affected some of the national treasures like the NHS, because it was constant troubles and tribulations in the NHS. But I felt that whatever happened, you never knew what her opinion was about some of the debates, great debates, but she was very constant. So I think we are really very grateful, but at the same time, I think it's also an example for leaders across the world, not just King Charles III, but for other leaders across the world, to emulate her humility and her sense of duty. When I looked at her her 15th Prime Minister, when she was shaking hands with Liz Truss, she was very frail, but she felt a sense of duty to do that. And we know that she then didn't go on to have her meeting with the Privy Council after that, but that shows you that commitment to service. And I think that is what I remember, and we really do admire her.
Well, thank you very much indeed for that tribute there, Professor Okolo. We will make strenuous effort to return to you. The program, of course, has just about 10 minutes or so left, but just a reminder, if you've just joined us here on Arise News, Buckingham Palace has announced that Queen Elizabeth II has died at the age of 96. She was a symbol of stability and continuity in a changing world. Her life underpinned by the devotion to duty that we've heard so many, including the Nigerian Minister of Foreign Affairs, refer to, fulfilling a promise she made on her 21st birthday in 1947, declaring that her whole life would be devoted to the service of her country and the Commonwealth. And so a world mourns for Queen Elizabeth II. And with me in the studio is the Nigerian Minister of Foreign Affairs, Geoffrey Onyeama. Thank you very much indeed, Minister, for staying with us. And Nigeria presumably will be sending a delegation to her funeral.
Well, we have to wait to see precisely, what the arrangements will be, an invitation, if it comes, and so forth. But ordinarily, yes, certainly.
Well, you would expect an invitation, wouldn't you?
Well, yeah, maybe.
Yeah, but you of course know all the nuances and sort of the back channels and the back discussions of diplomacy and so on and so forth. And Britain, a strong symbol of that diplomacy personified by Her Majesty the Queen.
Yes, absolutely. I think a lot of the success of Britain as a country post-Second World War, after she became, well, certainly the Queen, she owes a lot to her. The trade, especially in the areas of trade, she was able to really promote the trade side of the UK, the trade relations with countries around the world. And, because of her, a lot of countries, had excellent relations and so forth with them. In fact, the royal family in Britain play an important role in trade promotion. So,
absolutely.
And she was a very valuable asset for the UK from that point of view.
Yeah, but what sort of value did that bring to the countries that they were taking that trade to? I mean, what was it?
It's a two-way thing. Trade is a two-way thing.
Well, it's supposed to be a two-way thing, isn't it?
And very often it is. Yeah.
But I am very touched by some of the tributes that are coming through. One of them that came through earlier was from, and I'm just opening my phone here to bring it out, was from the former Nigerian Secretary General of the Commonwealth, Chief Emeka Anyaoku, who is of course someone who was quite close to the Queen and had to deal with her many, many times. He said, "The memories of the interactions of my wife and myself with Her Majesty during my 10 years as Commonwealth Secretary General will remain with us as long as we live." And remarkable period of time that he spent there as Commonwealth Secretary General for 10 years. And that kind of emphasized the centrality of Nigeria's position in the Commonwealth.
Yes, well, of course, one of the largest countries of the Commonwealth, and we've had the Secretary General, as you said, for 10 years. So Nigeria is an important member of the Commonwealth. Yes. And
he said that of her that she was a most remarkable and wise head whose standing and influence enabled the Commonwealth Association to survive its existential crisis. I mean, so he must know something that we obviously don't know, because I mean she operates a lot behind the scenes, but emphasizing that point that you were making of continuity and stability, and you just look at her and you're sort of inspired to go on.
Yeah, and also don't forget that as countries became independent, it was not obvious that a lot of them would remain within the Commonwealth.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
Yeah, I mean, you had the radical countries, like the Casablanca bloc in Africa, the Monrovia bloc, and others.
And a lot of countries that were tending towards communism.
Well, this is
and
it.
socialism.
Yes, and of course, a lot of countries, saw themselves as escaping from this.
Absolutely, the clutches.
And that kind of thing. So it was not a given that you would have them all come together, and I think that she played an important role in that.
Yes, absolutely. And just to, finish.
Yeah, an interesting transition, from colonialism with, the hostility and every other thing that you had with it, to this big family, as it were.
That's a very good point, because that brings up the question of her constant travels that you were talking about, the visits to Africa and so on. That must have been very reassuring, including for those who perhaps had hostile feelings towards the United Kingdom after that period of colonialism.
Absolutely.
But the fact that she kept up that, that smile and that relationship, that would have been very reassuring.
Yes, some of those leaders were imprisoned. You think of General Kenyatta, you think of Nkrumah and others, they were imprisoned by the British, and, so that it takes a lot of skill.
Absolutely.
To be able to placate and to come together.
And there was, of course, that very special moment, but also very controversial, when I think she got on the dance floor with Kwame Nkrumah, and it was like everybody was aghast. I mean, not the Africans, but the Europeans, that would happen. But that's the kind of person she was, wasn't it? I mean, the kind of person who could bring people together.
But she did that at every Commonwealth meeting with her host.
Yeah, but that was subsequent. I mean, I think that was the very first time that she actually did it, and that stood out. But that kind of broke the ice, and
because she's engaging with the Pacific, with people of the Caribbean, different cultures, different religions, and she was always the same, always the same. You would never have guessed that for one moment, there was any sense of unease, so amazing woman.
Minister, I want to thank you very much indeed. You really have made this a great remembrance for Her Majesty the Queen, who has died at the age of 96, and that's the Nigerian Minister of Foreign Affairs, Geoffrey Onyeama.